You're standing in a muddy medieval village. It's 1348. The sun just went down. There's no electricity, no antibiotics, and no way to tell if your doctor is about to heal you or accidentally send you to another dimension. And no, medieval people were not standing outside castles smoking cigarettes. But if you think they weren't finding other ways to get sedated, hallucinate, black out, or feel very weird on purpose, then you are severely underestimating medieval people. Because long before modern drugs, they already had strong ale, strange herbs, medicinal smoke, sleeping potions, and bread that could occasionally make your brain do backflips. Some of it was medicine, some of it was ritual, and some of it was probably just Greg from the village trying something stupid near a fire. So when did medieval people start tripping? To answer that, we have to stop thinking like modern people and start thinking like medieval people. Let's start with the most normal one, alcohol. In medieval Europe, alcohol was everywhere. Ale, beer, wine, cider, mead. If there was a reason to gather, somebody was probably drinking. Weddings, festivals, religious celebrations, village feasts, and sometimes because it was Tuesday. Now, contrary to popular belief, medieval people were not drunk 24 hours a day. People did drink water, but alcohol was extremely common. It lasted longer. It tasted better than questionable puddle water. And after working 12 hours in a muddy field, it was one of the few pleasures available. Imagine being a medieval peasant. You wake up before sunrise. You spend all day digging, carrying, lifting, planting, or harvesting. Your back hurts. Your feet hurt. Your hands hurt. Then, you drink ale. Suddenly, life is still terrible. But now it's terrible with a little music. That matters, because in a world with no painkillers, no therapy, no weekends, and no real way to escape your social class, alcohol was not just entertainment. It was relief. It softened pain. It made people social. It made festivals feel bigger. It made terrible food easier to eat. And it gave medieval peasants something modern people still chase today. A temporary break from being themselves. But alcohol was just the beginner level, because medieval medicine had plants that could do much more than make you tipsy. Let's talk about medieval surgery. Imagine needing surgery in the Middle Ages. No modern anesthesia, no sterile operating room, no trained anesthesiologist standing beside you. Just a surgeon, a knife, a prayer, and maybe 3 strong men holding you down like you owe them money. So medieval doctors had a problem. How do you cut into someone without them screaming so hard the entire village becomes religious? Their answer was sedation. And some of their sedatives were genuinely powerful. One famous type of medieval sleeping medicine was called dwale. Dwale was basically a medieval knockout drink. Recipes varied, but some versions included ingredients like opium, henbane, mandrake, hemlock, lettuce juice, vinegar, and wine, which is an insane sentence. Because that is not medicine like, take 2 tablets after food. That is medicine like, drink this and maybe wake up later. Opium came from the poppy plant. It could reduce pain and make people sleepy. Henbane could cause confusion, hallucinations, delirium, and sedation. Mandrake was surrounded by myths, fear, and magic. Hemlock could kill you. So when a medieval healer mixed these things together, he was not making a cute herbal tea. He was playing chemical roulette with a wooden spoon. And sometimes it worked. That's the crazy part. Some of these plants actually had real effects. They could dull pain. They could make someone unconscious. They could calm a patient down. They could make surgery possible. But the dosage was terrifying. Too little, and the patient is awake screaming. Too much, and the patient is meeting God early. This is why medieval medicine feels so insane to us. It was not always stupid. It was just dangerous. They had real observations. They knew certain plants did certain things. They knew some mixtures made people sleep. They knew some smoke and vapors affected the body. They just didn't have modern chemistry. controlled dosing, or the ability to say, maybe don't put hemlock in that. Now let's talk about mandrake. Mandrake might be one of the weirdest plants in medieval history. The root sometimes looked vaguely human. So naturally, medieval people looked at it and said, that thing probably screams when you pull it out of the ground. According to old legends, if you pulled up a mandrake root, it could let out a deadly scream. So people came up with complicated methods to harvest it, including tying it to a dog and letting the dog pull it out. Which is one of those historical details that makes you realize humans have always been creative in the worst possible ways. Mandrake was associated with magic, fertility, sleep, poison, and medicine. It appeared in medical texts, folklore, and superstition. And because mandrake contains compounds that can affect the nervous system, it wasn't just scary because people were dumb. It was scary because it actually did things. A person who took mandrake could become drowsy, confused, detached, or delirious. In other words, a medieval person taking the wrong amount of mandrake wasn't just relaxing. They might have been fully tripping in a way they had no language to explain. And mandrake wasn't alone. Henbane was another medieval favorite. Henbane had a reputation for being useful, dangerous, and deeply suspicious. It was used in medicine. It was associated with witchcraft. It could be burned, brewed, swallowed, or applied in different preparations. And it could cause hallucinations, agitation, confusion, and bizarre behavior. Which means somewhere in medieval Europe, some poor guy probably took henbane for pain, stared at a wall for 6 hours, and came back convinced the Virgin Mary was hiding inside a cabbage. This is where the line between medicine and magic starts getting blurry. Because if a plant makes you see things, what does that mean in a medieval worldview? Today we might say hallucination. A medieval person might say vision, or demon, or prophecy, or punishment, or miracle. Context was everything. If a monk had visions after fasting, praying, drinking wine, inhaling incense, and sleeping 3 hours a night, that could be interpreted as divine. If a random peasant had visions after eating suspicious bread, that might be interpreted as illness. If a woman knew which herbs made people sleep, see things, or feel strange, that might be interpreted as witchcraft. Same human brain, same weird chemicals, completely different explanation. And then there was ergot. Ergot is where this story gets genuinely terrifying. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye. Rye was a common grain in medieval Europe, especially among poorer people. And when rye became contaminated with ergot, people could unknowingly eat it in bread. The result was ergot poisoning, also known historically as St. Anthony's fire. Symptoms could include burning pain, convulsions, vomiting, spasms, gangrene, and hallucinations. So imagine you're a medieval villager. You eat bread. Then your hands burn. Your body shakes. Your neighbors start seeing terrifying visions. Someone screams that demons are attacking. And nobody knows the bread did it. That is nightmare fuel. Because unlike a potion, ergot wasn't always intentional. Nobody had to say, let's trip today. They just had to eat the wrong loaf. And suddenly the entire village was living inside a horror movie written by mold. This is one of the most important parts of the story. Not all medieval tripping was chosen. Some of it was accidental, bad grain, wrong herbs, contaminated medicine, stronger than expected potions, smoke from burning plants, a healer who guessed the dose, a patient who drank too much, a monk who fasted too hard, a peasant who trusted Greg from the village when he said, I saw this plant in the woods. The Middle Ages were full of accidental experiments, and the lab rats were everyone. But smoke also mattered. Long before modern inhalers, people used smoke and vapors as medicine. Herbs could be burned. Aromatic plants could be inhaled. Rooms could be fumigated. Incense was used in churches. Smoke was associated with purification, prayer, healing, and protection. From a modern perspective, treating sickness with smoke sounds backwards, but in medieval logic, it made sense. If bad air could cause disease, then maybe good-smelling smoke could clean the air. If herbs had power, maybe their smoke carried that power. If incense rose upward, maybe prayers rose with it. So smoke wasn't just smoke, it was medicine. It was ritual. It was atmosphere. It was spiritual technology. Now imagine a medieval church. Candles everywhere. Incense in the air, chanting, colored light through stained glass. People fasting. People exhausted. People terrified of hell. People desperate for miracles. That environment could absolutely alter your state of mind.